got to kind of shout out to Angel Reese. I don't know if this is a comedy or not, but she is applying for a trademark for the term me bound. And if you watch, if you scroll on Instagram and are fed sports things, you may see a lot of Angel Reese basically clunking layups that she then gets her rebound for. And a lot of people think that's the only reason she gets so many double-doubles and so forth is because she misses so many shots that are easy rebounds. There is a term now called me bound that she is looking to trademark and own. And I at least give her credit for going for it.
Yeah, what's next? Mitchell Robinson trying to trademark being the horrible free throw shooter that he is? I don't know. Brick House?
Brick House, just trademark it. I think the Commodores may have something to say about that, but... Welcome to Wait, What? Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGhee, the podcast that takes an often irreverent, sometimes cynical, and on occasion, a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David Parro.
And I'm Tim McGhee.
I'm hoping that all of our listeners, especially those that are fathers, had a wonderful Father's Day weekend. Tim, I hope yours was great.
It was, thank you. And yours? I know you were out in Chicago.
Yeah, I was grateful to get back to Chicago to spend the weekend with my two daughters and grandkids. So yes, it was indeed awesome. Well, we had a dramatic but soggy end to the U.S. Open at Oakmont. The lack of major star power at the top of the leaderboard led to a somewhat muted viewership. We've crowned a Stanley Cup repeat winner and could have an NBA winner before the end of this week. Things seem to be getting pretty chippy in the WNBA, but let's put all that aside for the moment. And Tim, what is on your mind?
Well, let's talk U.S. Open because it was a pretty dramatic ending after a rain delay. J.J. Spaun was 150-1 odds to win the U.S. Open. He sank a 64-foot putt on 18 on Sunday afternoon to win. Skyrocketed in the World Golf rankings as well as the Ryder Cup rankings. I think he's number 3 in the Ryder Cup rankings right now. So congratulations to him, 34-year-old. Wasn't well known on the tour. I think that's safe to say, even among, more than casual golf fans. But what I loved in particular was the fact that the putter that he used is now flying off the shelves, which I find fascinating, right? It's this belief that golfers have that they're going to be able to putt now better because they use the same equipment that J.J. Spaun used to sink the 64-foot putt to win the U.S. Open.
I used to always say that committed golfers will spare no expense if they believe it might shave a stroke or two off their handicap. It really is crazy. But I get a kick out of it was this smallish independent company and, happy for them. I mean, it is exciting. It's kind of a wild looking putt. And that putt he hit on 18, absolutely. I mean, that course was playing so freaking hard. It was pretty amazing.
64-footer. So very early in my career at Momentum, I was working for Chris Wilde, who's now running Horizon Sports and Entertainment with David Levy. But Chris told me something when we were working on a golf activation. He said golfers look for 3 things. They want to play the best courses, they want to use the best equipment, and they're looking for that one tip that's going to help them improve their game and shave strokes off their score. And I've always kept that in mind over 25 years later whenever I'm working with a client who's activating in or around golf, because that's something to keep in mind when you're creating a program to reach a golfer, whether they be casual or avid. So it's interesting that we see that in real life in real time with what's going on with J.J. Spaun's putter.
Yeah, and listen, I think it goes back to, whether it was Nike or whether it was TaylorMade or Callaway, they tried to, ride these amazing performances of the athletes that they back. And J.J. Spaun is an incredible story. By the way, San Diego State Aztec, went to high school at San Dimas High School in California. Trivia question. What was San Dimas High School most famous for prior to J.J. Spaun winning the U.S. Open?
I don't know. The name is familiar. Give me a hint.
Well, San Dimas High School football rules.
Oh, they were the arch rivals of Ridgemont High, yes?
No, that would be a good one. That was that was Lincoln High School.
Oh, that's right.
Because you'll recall the famous sign saying "Assassinate Lincoln."
Yes, and Forrest Whitaker was their.
Forrest Whitaker with one of his best roles,
yes,
as Jefferson,
right?
I think,
which kind of interesting, Jefferson and Lincoln.
Right.
Not that they were contemporaries, but
San Dimas High School, made famous as the high school of Bill and Ted in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
wow, I haven't seen that movie in 30 years.
And add to the trivia, Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves are teaming up again for a Broadway performance of Waiting for Godot, the famous Samuel Beckett play. So some exciting things to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed they didn't call us for those parts.
It would have been it's definitely an excellent adventure. There's no doubt about that.
What we see going on in golf is very similar to what we have seen in NASCAR for many, many years. The old saying in NASCAR is win on Sunday, sell on Monday as it relates to the OEMs, Toyota, Chevy, whomever. But yeah, congratulations to JJ Spaun.
Well, listen, obviously a lot is going on in the golf world. One of the stories that we've, I think, touched on in the past, we knew it was coming for a bit, but Brian Rolapp, who is mostly known as the chief media and business officer at the NFL, is taking over the CEO role at the PGA Tour. Jay Monahan, of course, is still the commissioner, but his term is up at the end of 2026, and that will be the end of Jay Monahan's era as the leader at the PGA Tour. And it does seem that Brian is going to be taking over all primary duties of managing things. His background is largely on the media side. The tour does not have a negotiation on the media side coming up for a bit. Their current deal runs through 2030, but that will be something that he'll be faced with. But there's a lot more, obviously, that he will be given responsibility for. And it's a big change. I think that the thing that we will all start talking about, of course, and would be a great time to start now, is what we think the legacy of the Jay Monahan era is going to be at the PGA Tour. Because it has been tumultuous over the last couple of years, obviously.
It's funny that you should say that, because as you were talking about Jay Monahan stepping down at the end of 2026, I think there's a lot to still be written, which is probably why that transition period is going to be so long, because I do think he would like to sort of clean up a lot of the open issues that are going on. He followed a legend in Tim Fincham. I know that Jay was very highly respected and well liked when he came into that role. He's had some missteps in terms of how he handled the LIV announcement and things like that. So I do think that there's an opportunity for him to burnish that legacy between now and the end of 2026. So I'm gonna reserve judgment personally until it's closer to that time.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way. Listen, overall, I think that a lot of change has happened, and for the most part, the players are making a lot more money, and the tour remains, I think, viable, even though it had what some considered, and I hate using this term, especially given things that are going on in the world right now, but a near existential threat from LIV when it came out and started throwing the kind of money that it did around. And his initial response, and I'm sure this was one that the board advised on and the consultants advised on, was to go out aggressively. And Jay was not one to be in the spotlight. So that first time he came out after the onslaught of signings from LIV and players to LIV was to be combative, or try to be combative, and criticize. And there's the famous quote, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have this actually down, but it's significant, I think, is that no one ever had to apologize for playing on the PGA Tour. Now, that changed dramatically when, as you know, with no one knowing it, he announced basically a merger with PIF and with the DP World Tour, basically uniting everything, where he would be in control of LIV and this larger entity. Then that never got finalized. Players were pissed about that. And he then announces a deal with SSG, the Strategic Sports Group, which of course was led by Fenway. And things seem to have been a little stabilized. I think LIV got one more big signing in John Rahm. But now there's calls for unification. And I continue to believe that, to me, the easy path to unification is for LIV to basically say, we're only going to be X number of tournaments. We can make it fit within the PGA Tour framework. But that may not be doable. That LIV has now taken on some great new leadership with Scott O'Neill and Chris Heck moving into a key role as well. Greg Norman has been pushed aside, which was the right move, obviously. But there's still no pathway to me unless LIV makes some changes in the way they're approaching, whether that's, the no cuts or the number of holes or the number of tournaments. So I think still a lot of work is to go. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to have somewhat of a mixed legacy.
Yes, I agree. A couple things to note. One, Brian Rolapp and Scott O'Neill were classmates at Harvard Business School. Jay Monahan and Greg Norman never had a great relationship, by all accounts. So right off the bat, I think that's a good sign. But we like movie references on this show. I think you can agree.
Wait, what? We did.
Putting LIV together with the PGA Tour sort of reminds me of the scene in Apollo 13 where they're trying to retrofit the carbon dioxide filter from the lunar module with the carbon dioxide monitor from the command module, and they had to jury rig it, and ultimately it worked. And I can't help but think that might be ultimately what happens between LIV and the PGA Tour. Yeah. They're so different in terms of format and players and media deals and sponsorships and everything else. But Scott and Chris are the Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid of sports marketing. They've worked together going back to their days at the NBA. They were classmates and friends going back to Villanova, obviously with the 76ers. So I think they're a great pairing, and they'll do great things there.
Yeah, a couple things. One, I think different can live together. I mean, the tour is, of course, invested in TGL. So, and as you've mentioned before, there are a few tournaments that operate under a different format. But right now, the sides are standing strong. My understanding is the PIF has added some money to the pool for LIV, but put some strings on that certain performance strings. So we'll see how that affects. The second thing I wanted to say is your memory of what they were solving for in Apollo 13 is quite remarkable. I want to hats off to you for that. I just remember they had a really serious problem to deal with, and they had to fix it. And they did, of course.
Oh, I bet if you saw what's behind me as a shrine to the Apollo program. Memorabilia, autographs, books, everything.
I didn't know that about you.
No.
I'm like, who are you?
Yeah, no, I'm a huge space geek. One last thing on Brian Rolapp. He was widely considered to be the next commissioner of the NFL after Roger Goodell ultimately decided to retire. Some people say he got tired of waiting around. What I would say is he's getting invaluable experience running a professional sports organization and makes him even a better fit for the next commissioner role. He's 52 years old, and I believe Roger Goodell is 68. So certainly if Goodell goes through this next contract, Brian Rolapp could very conceivably be the next commissioner of the NFL, despite the fact that he's now taking on the CEO role at PGA Tour Enterprises.
Yeah, and Jay Monahan is a little younger than I thought he was, actually, as well. I think it's an unbelievable opportunity for him. The property is great. It's a good television property. Mark Lazarus, past guest, talked to us about what that property means to the network in terms of its audience. That hasn't changed. I don't think that will change for a while in terms of what the sport is to people and the type of audience that likes to view it. But yeah, and it's a cool challenge because it's a challenge. There's cool things in front to try to solve for, and it's at a time that he'll be able to take a lot of credit depending on where this goes. We will see. I think we both had predicted, I certainly had predicted that by the end of the year, this would be solved, I guess, meaning there would be either a unification or not a unification, but we would at least know where things stand. And again, I hate using that word because I don't even know what unification means. But yeah, I think it's an interesting time. I wanted to move on a little just to follow up on the discussion we had last week, get your take on where we think FIFA Club World Cup stands given the launch. What I'm seeing a lot of is FIFA and maybe the promoters here, trying to make it look like, no, what are you talking about? This is going great. It reminds me, of course, a little of the Animal House scene, like all is calm, or stay calm, all is good, or whatever that line was. I'm sure you totally know it, but it doesn't seem that way. I mean, there's lots of shots of empty stadiums, and I continue to believe that this was a bad miscalculation. DAZN invested heavily in this as a way to help them introduce into the U.S. audience. I think that was another miscalculation. Not to say that they shouldn't be looking to expand their relationship with FIFA and what that means to get DAZN a little more positive reputation in the U.S., because it's not yet. But to pay that kind of money for this event and have it be panned as much as it is, I just think people missed the boat. They expected a lot more than should have been expected.
Well, when FIFA puts its name on an event, you expect a first-class global event. So I don't know if it's fans' expectations that should have been tempered. I think question the whole concept of the FIFA Club World Cup, to be honest with you. There were students at local schools in the Miami area that were getting offers for $4 tickets to see Inter Miami's first match. This is to see Messi, the GOAT. You know, honestly, some of the matches, I mean, they drew in their first match against the Egyptian side. But some of the other matches, PSG won 4-0 in their first match. Bayern Munich won 10-0. So even the games aren't great.
Yeah, it was a little bizarre to hear that the Egyptian team, Al Ahly, fans somewhat dominated in that opening match against Inter. I was a little surprised to hear that.
I think the question that came up was, why put Miami in the market where fans can see Messi play 17 MLS matches plus any other competitions that they may have that are played as home matches?
Agreed, but I think the thought was, and this is where I say miscalculation, is that compare this to Champions League, which is a club competition, UEFA club competition. And that's taken seriously as an annual competition, not all that much behind the individual league that these clubs compete in. And I think the thought was that you could replicate that in the United States with a following for MLS teams, which Inter Miami has a reasonably good local following, as do a number of the other teams throughout MLS, and that it would be that moment to go and cheer for the team to help build that type of following in the United States. And again, I just don't think US-based soccer fans or the casual fan still don't get that connection with the way global football works.
No, I agree. I think where FIFA also tried to position this as the most prestigious club hardware that a team could win. And I think that's ridiculous because you just mentioned Champions League, which I think everybody else would agree is the premier club competition.
Yeah, but this is global club championship. I think that's the idea.
Yeah, but
it's like World Cup is to Euros.
Right.
You know,
Club World Cup would be to
Champions League.
But it's not. I understand the logic.
Or CONCACAF.
I understand the logic, but it's not.
I agree.
It's not even close.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not they continue this, who knows? Yeah. We're also, this summer of soccer also has the Gold Cup going on, CONCACAF Gold Cup. The U.S. won 5-0 in their first match against Trinidad and Tobago. Many of the top players for the U.S. are not playing, most notably Christian Pulisic. Doesn't really mean anything other than pride. I think when you play for your country, you always want to win hardware. But the U.S., by virtue of the fact that they're one of the host countries next year for World Cup, they don't have to win this in order to qualify for World Cup. But speaking as a fan, I hope Pochettino can right the ship as we go, because we mentioned it last week. Last week when we recorded, we were exactly 1 year out from the World Cup, so we are now.
Yeah, things aren't looking good, and the heat will continue to be on. It's just that I think, and this goes back to somewhat this larger discussion, and it's just I think people would want to get excited about U.S. men's national team in a similar way that people have gotten excited about U.S. women's national team, and it's just constant letdown, and that affects sponsorship, that affects TV interest, that affects a lot of things. Now, I think FIFA World Cup 2026 in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada is going to be amazing, absolutely amazing. And this, to me, ends up being a distraction hurting to the buildup of that. This being FIFA Club World Cup, by the way.
It'll be so far in the rearview mirror by this time next year that nobody will even remember this event took place.
Well, you might be right about that, but because nobody can't remember what you didn't know about in the first place.
Yeah. Listen, my only concern about the World Cup next year is the ongoing uncertainty in terms of, we talked about this, players, coaches, fans, administrators being granted access to come into the country. The State Department has said they will make exceptions for athletes. But I think there's enough uncertainty that it may impact global ticket sales. I'm not sure. All objective measures, the 1994 World Cup, last time it was held here in the U.S., was the most successful from a commercial standpoint of any World Cup in history. Now that we've gone up to 48 teams, more matches, I think this one is certainly guaranteed, barring some crazy situation where fans just don't buy tickets because they don't want to come to this country. 2026 World Cup will be the most successful from a commercial perspective of any World Cup in history.
I want to talk a little about NBA. We're on the brink of OKC possibly closing out their series in Game 6, which is Thursday night. We're recording this on a Wednesday. But one of the things that we haven't gotten to was, I wouldn't say it was an announcement, but some discussion or conversation with Adam Silver saying that he's not planning on immediately or in the very, very near future announcing the expansion teams. And that was at the very beginning of the finals starting, where this was out. And Seattle has been expected to be an expansion team. Seattle, of course, famously lost its team to OKC, which is now about to win a title or close to winning a title. Not saying Indiana can't come back and win the next 2 games, of course. But I think it's interesting, and to me it feels as though he's just waiting for the absolute best time. I still think something's going to happen this year. It seems to make sense, but I think they're looking to try to take advantage of what the absolute best timing on this would be. I think we all expected, given that it looks like the Boston thing is sailing through, the massive sale that they got, $6.1 billion for that team, a new television deal, a lot of excitement around that. Very good finals, with the possible exception of a small market finals, a very good overall playoffs, right? In terms of television and interest and excitement and great play. And I think they're getting amazing play on the court in the finals. They're suffering a little bit from some, smaller market team situation.
Yep, the viewership numbers are trending up as the series goes on. And as usually happens, the longer a series go, the higher the ratings get because people are tuning in. There's more drama. It'll be interesting to see if OKC can close it out. Halliburton is hurt, and we'll see if he has his Willis Reed moment and comes out to play, or if he has a Scottie Pippen moment and can't go in a finals game. So that'll be interesting to see as well.
What else do you have?
Well, just one other thing. So recently the WNBA entered into renewal discussions with ION Network to extend the current media rights deal. And the WNBA Players Union came out and said that they were left out of the media discussions despite being given assurances by Kathy Engelbrecht that they would be involved in those conversations. What I find interesting is there's 2 sides to every story, so I don't know what the league has said as it relates to making assurances that the players would be involved, but it would certainly have been unprecedented to have a players union involved in those media discussions. So that's everything that the league does, everything that the union does now, I think has to be viewed through the lens of the CBA coming up for renewal at the end of this season. So maybe I should have saved that till the end of the show for what I'm looking forward to, but I do think it's worth mentioning because it would have been so unprecedented to have the players union involved in those conversations.
Yeah, I think obviously the percentage that they get of that deal and how it factors into overall revenue and what the split is, that's all part of CBAs, right? Do they have, given where the WNBA is and given this partnership that most leagues like to try to showcase and put on that face that it's a true partnership, would it have been illogical to have some input from them, I suppose, just to get away from this type of criticism, perhaps? But they have to be out, trying to maximize what the total value of their property is, and I think if the feeling was that would help add the value to it, then it might have made all the sense in the world. But yeah, no, generally agree with you. And a lot of chippiness going on in the WNBA right now, which I think is probably more good than bad because of eyeballs.
Not if you're Caitlin Clark. Talking about eyeballs, you got poked in the eye.
Sometimes you gotta, yeah. She's it seems to be almost a regular thing now, and I think it's going to have to be addressed at the league level and the with the officials as to how these games are going, because it's getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah, there was I think chippiness is a bit of an understatement for the game last night between Connecticut and Indiana. Resulted in a number of ejections at the end of the game.
Hey, one more thing before we take a break that I wanted to touch on, and it ties to things that we've talked about in the past about Amazon Prime Video and NASCAR. The Mexico City race was this week, and it didn't do necessarily great. It's Prime is certainly delivering less numbers than Fox did. No surprise at all there. But I think they're continuing to build their relationship with the sport and communicate with fans that it's there. And that documentary that Josh Altman, a past guest, discussed with us several weeks ago, that type of media on Prime Video, I think, helps get people to know that Amazon and NASCAR are in a partnership.
Yeah, I think Amazon is building for the long term, the viewership. But it's interesting. I was with my Campbell's client yesterday, and we had NASCAR Cup Series driver Chase Briscoe at Campbell's headquarters. He drives the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and he had just gotten back from Mexico City and said the crowd there was very disappointing. He has heard rumblings that they will not be going back. NASCAR will not be going back to Mexico City next year. It wasn't. They do like the Mexico Series, the fans, but they did not really embrace the Cup Series going down.
I read something totally different than that. I read that the fans were in love with the drivers and very excited anytime they had a chance to be around them or greet them. So that might have been plain pockets, but this is coming from media reports.
Well, the fans who were there may have had a great experience with the drivers, but what Chase and somebody from the Joe Gibbs team said was that the crowd was very underwhelming.
Yeah. Listen, I think this is a wise move to be in a place like Mexico City. I think it's a population that is a car culture population that I think they can build. So I think going to these markets and trying these things makes some sense. I got a kick out of the fact that Shane Van Gisbergen, who, by the way, people I think call SVG, and given that we now call, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander SGA, I think that's kind of cool. He's won 2 races. He won the inaugural Chicago street race, and he won Mexico City. And I'm like, I think you just put this guy in. Anytime you do something unique or new or different or out of market, you throw this guy in a car, and he's got a chance to bring it home. So and he's a New Zealander of all places. Anyway, I thought that was great. But strong reporting coming out about NASCAR close to doing a street race in San Diego. Now, up until a few years ago, there was an oval in Fontana, way outside of Los Angeles, that was supposed to be covering the Southern California market, another market that you would normally consider would be a good car market. Drag racing has generally done well there. And when NASCAR launched that race some time ago, it was with great fanfare, the Hollywood scene and everything, and now they're not racing there, but looking at a street race in San Diego.
Yeah, we were talking about that yesterday. Apparently part of the course would be on a runway at the airport. What they're talking
very
about.
Cool. And by the way, you should know this for the next time you chat with him. You may know this already. Joe Gibbs is from that area, and he grew up, doing some street racing type of stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned SVG. Some drivers just do really well on those road type courses.
And Boris said
yes.
Boris said you throw him in a car. It's like anyone. I'm racing a road course. Throw that guy in my extra car.
Robbie Gordon was like that.
Yeah.
He was batshit crazy though.
He was, wasn't he? I was about to say that, but
my goodness.
Glad you did.
Take a break, partner?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we're back, and now's the point in the show where we take a look forward. David, what do you got on your radar for the coming days and weeks?
It is almost here. The Nathan's 4th of July hot dog eating contest, and Joey Chestnut is back. This is one of the most exciting things to hear. We talked about this last year. He had done a deal with one of the plant-based products, and the company that runs this felt like it wasn't a good fit because the eaters have contracts that say they will only back Nathan's. But I think cooler heads or smarter heads prevailed, and Joey came out and said he loves Nathan's. It will be the only non-plant-based hot dog he endorses, and he's back. So I think it's a little like the conversation we started with, right? The best eaters should be eating in this contest because it's the biggest stage, And Joey Chestnut, as I've said consistently, is an American hero and deserves to be back in this great contest.
Good to see him back.
A couple other quick things. I got to kind of shout out to Angel Reese. I don't know if this is a comedy or not, but she is applying for a trademark for the term me bound. And if you watch, if you scroll on Instagram and are fed sports things, you may see a lot of Angel Reese basically clunking layups that she then gets her rebound for. And a lot of people think that's the only reason she gets so many double-doubles and so forth is because she misses so many shots that are easy rebounds. There is a term now called me bound that she is looking to trademark and own. And I at least give her credit for going for it.
Yeah, what's next? Mitchell Robinson trying to trademark being the horrible free throw shooter that he is? I don't know. Brick House?
Brick House, just trademark it. I think the Commodores may have something to say about that. But anyway, the other thing that as we're approaching the Winter Games, is there's an effort. There's a pro curling league, and it's called the Rock League, which I actually love the name of that. They have a great logo. And this is one of those leagues where I don't think it's going to have a lot of commercial appeal. It may get some people tuned in. I like the fact that people are trying this. There is interest in the sport. There are clubs that are popping up. It does great at the Winter Olympic Games. People do tune into it because of its uniqueness and its kind of silly movements that people make, but people do get into that at the time. But around the Olympics, we get into a lot of things that don't necessarily make for big commercials, say tours or leagues. And we've seen that with gymnastics and various other things. But, hats off to doing this. They feel there's a billion-dollar opportunity out there. And, I'm all for people giving things a shot when they think there is a market for that. And to me, that's the key.
Good luck to them.
It looks like it's kind of almost like the TGL model in terms of how they'll go about it. So we'll see. What about you?
Well, you said next time you see Chase Briscoe, I'm actually going to be going to the race this Sunday, hosting some people. But I have to laugh because if you remember when we had our good friend Steve Laletta on and he invited us to come to a race, I suggested Pocono, and you guys literally laughed at me. And guess where I'm going this weekend? It's Pocono. So
there you go.
Screw you guys. I'm going to Pocono.
Well, that's awesome. So I wish you a great time.
Yeah.
No, I have great memories of going to that. It was just a funny moment.
No, I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been to a race in several years. I've got a driver to root for, so I'm excited. So, all right. Well, with that, we're going to say goodbye to you, our listeners. We want to thank you, as always, for listening to us, following us, liking us, sharing us, subscribing. We'd love to see your questions and feedback, so please, we can take it. But until next week, he's DP, I'm McGhee, and we'll talk soon.